Hello my friends, and welcome to a completely serious and not at all whimsical video lecture. I'm your Professor Connor, and welcome to the Paleopage. And today we are going to explore the fascinating anatomical world of the dinosaurs. I will try my best to help you get into and understand one of the most mysterious physical features of these bygone reptiles. We will discuss the structure of these bodily features, and then we will go on to understand their function and the important fossils that at one time came out of them. Ladies and gentlemen, buckle in, make sure you take your notes because there will be a quiz on this, because we are going to now learn about Now, what is a butt? We need to understand this before going into the butts of a lost group of animals. In the human case, the butt is the back sides of the joints to our hips and our femurs, which typically in the middle has a hole called an anus, which is used for the release of waste products like feces and intestinal gases. And it's covered by two large bulbs, which comprises of the gluteal muscles as well as layers of fat. This is the human buttocks, and it's relatively similar to the buttocks of all mammals. However, mammals are really weird when it comes to their lower anatomical features. Actually, pretty much every group of tetrapods other than mammals have a much different system known as the cloaca. The cloaca is biologically the all-in-one hole, used for the release of waste, of course, but also used for reproductive purposes. Some animals to reproduce partake in a cloacal kiss, and sometimes the males evolve an appendage to help fertilize the female. But basically all animals more derived than arthropods and that are not mammals have a cloaca. The group that is perhaps most known for having cloacas is, of course, the reptile group, which, technically isn't really a classification to begin with, but we'll just say reptile for simplistic sake. All groups of modern reptiles have cloacas, from turtles to snakes. Given that all reptiles have cloacas, it can be really easily inferred that Earth's all-time most successful group of reptiles had cloacas. Dinosaurs, of course, had cloacas, and this is a feature of their anatomy that we can know for sure. Not just because other reptiles have them, but because our modern avian dinosaur friends have them, the birds. However, while it can be basically inferred 100% that these animals had cloacas, for the longest time we still couldn't say it was actually 100% because we didn't have any fossil evidence of them, and we can't say something 100% without hard proof. We never really had a fossil of a cloaca because the cloaca is made of soft tissue, and infamously, fossils most of the time are not of soft tissue, but hard tissue, like bone. While soft tissues and scales and skin and even melanosomes do fossilize from time to time in really perfect conditions, the animal often doesn't die in the right position for the cloaca to be preserved. However, just because it's rare does not mean that it's never happened. This here is Cabrozichnus pulchris, a relatively newly discovered early stem reptile from the Asilian stage of the Permian period. It was found in the Goldlader Formation in Germany, and it was described just last month. Being Asilian in age, which is the oldest stage of the Permian period, over 295 million years ago, the Cabrozichnus specimen is now the oldest known fossils which preserves epidermal scales, and potentially, which is most important for this video, the cloacal vent. So if the cloacal vent can preserve from an animal who died almost 300 million years ago, then surely it can preserve from a dinosaur who died only about 60 million years ago, right? You would be correct to think that. The first ever, and so far only, dinosaur cloaca to have ever been found belongs to this small ceratopsian from the Cretaceous of Mongolia, the Psittacosaurus. This Psittacosaurus specimen, numbered SMFR 4970 and housed in the Senckenberg Natural History Museum of Germany, is exceptionally well preserved. This fossil still shows the animal's colors, being a shade of brown with a black back and a tan underbelly. It still shows how the animal sort of had these quills on top of its tail. And most apparent for this video at least, the fossil still preserves some cloacal anatomy. The Psittacosaurus cloaca was able to be preserved due to the unique position the animal died in. The cloaca is this separate, much darker color from the surrounding region, and it has a different direction/orientation of scales. The researchers stated, and I quote, "The vent consists of three parts: a paired set of lateral lips that converge anteriorly and flare laterally in the posterior direction, and the region between the lips consists of a bulging dorsal lobe. The opening is inferred to be between the dorsal lobe and the lateral lips, where they converge anteriorly." Vinther, Nicholas, Kelly, 2021. Now, in more easy to understand terms, the cloacal covering of this Psittacosaurus is made of these two sort of bulb things called lateral lips. And there's a dorsal lobe in between / behind these two lateral lips. And the actual cloacal vent, or the hole, would have likely been in the center of these three components. The researchers who described the cloaca in detail back in 2021 also pointed out that these structures had lateral swellings, which were in the same position as crocodilian paracloacal musk glands. This could potentially indicate that the Psittacosaurus could have released some sort of pheromone or hormone or scent from its cloaca for social signaling. Another feature of this dinosaur butt is, of course, it being a different color from the surrounding scales. This likely could have been a physical display to other Psittacosaurus. However, as the researchers also pointed out, we cannot confirm this because as of now we have a sample size of literally 1. Speaking of not being able to confirm, it should be noted that there's a lot of important internal and anatomical features of this animal that we don't know. For one, we have no idea what the actual shape of the vent is, whether it's a circular hole like in birds, or more like a slit like in crocodilians. We also have no way of telling what the sex of this animal was, because the sexual organs, either the penis or the clitoris, would have been made of much more soft tissue and they would have been inside the cloaca. While we have no clue of the sexual contents of the Psittacosaurus cloaca, we do know of another type of contents within the structure, or rather, some contents that would have been getting ready to come out of the structure actually. This lighter cream-colored material that you see here, as I have circled hopefully, is known as a coprolite, also known as fossilized dinosaur shit. Okay, if you're wondering why the framing looks a little weird, in case it does, it's because I accidentally kicked my tripod while going to adjust my script, so sorry about that. Anyways, this here is a piece of fossilized dinosaur feces from all the way back in the Jurassic period, known as a coprolite. Coprolites are fossilized fecal matter. These fossils, while they may seem a little strange at first, are actually incredibly important for us to understand the ecologies and environments from millions of years ago. It should be noted that I am not holding a literal piece of shit, but think of it more of a mineralized cast of a literal piece of shit. Because it is a fossil, it's essentially a rock. In fact, the word coprolite comes from the ancient Greek words kopros, meaning dung, and lithos, meaning stone. So they are quite literally dung stones. The coprolites that fossilize the most often are those of carnivorous animals like theropods. This is because carnivore stools have higher levels of calcium phosphate, because the animals are eating meat. And this high level of calcium phosphate makes them preserve and mineralize much more easily than the scat of an herbivore. This coprolite I have here also likely comes from a carnivore, and since it seems to be from a larger piece, you can see it sort of like has a bit of a breakage here, then it likely came from a large theropod. This coprolite also came from the Morrison Formation, so there's a pretty solid chance that I am holding the fossilized of an animal like Ceratosaurus, Torvosaurus, or Allosaurus. And either of those three options, I now have bragging rights. While the majority of dinosaur coprolites that we find are from carnivores, a way that we can tell for sure is by checking the contents of the coprolite. If it contains things such as bones or bone fragments from other animals, then most likely it comes from a carnivore, obviously. This is how they identified the animal that made the largest coprolite ever discovered. This here is Barnum, a 67.5 centimeter by 15.7 centimeter and a 9.28 kilograms coprolite that was found in South Dakota and then acquired by George Franson in early 2020. This coprolite, being from the Cretaceous-Cell Creek Formation, being filled with bone fragments, and being so large, could have only come from one animal, the Tyrannosaurus rex. Grandison named the T-Rex Barnum after the paleontologist Barnum Brown, who had discovered and named Tyrannosaurus rex back in 1902. Barnum is also now the centerpiece of a museum in Arizona dedicated entirely to coprolites, called the Pooseum, which is so funny yet so awesome. The Pooseum houses and displays hundreds of coprolites, whether from dinosaurs, crocs, or even little frogs. They even have some fossilized intestinal gas trapped within amber, which is awesome. And it's free to get in. You can see all these fossils for free. I will have a link to the Pooseum website in the description below if you wish to check it out. I highly recommend it. Their website was a major help during the coprolite half of this video. And so thank you to the Pooseum. You gave me and my fellow researcher a lot of good laughs during the researching of this video and a lot of insight. Coprolites like this are what's known as a trace fossil, since it's something being left behind by an animal, rather than a piece of the animal itself being left behind, sort of like a bone, which we would call a body fossil. Other trace fossils include things like foot tracks, and the study of trace fossils specifically is called ichnology. The first ever coprolites were found in the early 1800s, and they were first interpreted as fossilized fir stones or pine cones. And then a little bit later, they were thought to be bezoar stones, which are fossil gastrointestinally trapped objects. The first person to really realize that these little fossils were something a lot more was none other than the mother of paleontology herself, Mary Anning, who I will have to make an actual dedicated video to eventually because she was amazing. She had realized already in 1824 that these bezoar stones were found a lot within the abdomen of ichthyosaur skeletons from the Elias Formation, and that if broken they often contained the fossilized bones of fish, scales, and even bones from other ichthyosaurs. These observations made by Anning in the early 1820s led to geologist William Buckland in 1829 to describe them as fossilized feces, and he also gave them the name coprolite. Also, fun fact, he figured out that these spiral markings on these could have come from spiral ridges within the intestines of the ichthyosaurs, and that some of them were black due to the ink of cephalopods that the ichthyosaurs had eaten. See, you can learn so much from a fossilized Not only do these fossils tell us the shape of an animal's bowels and what they were eating and all that, but they are also some of the most important clues we have to look back at ecosystems and animal behaviors of the past. As I put my fossilized away and the video starts to come to an end, I have to mention something. Coprolites are not the only fossils we have that have come out of dinosaurs. In fact, the study of the other things that come out of dinosaurs is a lot more extensive. Hence why I didn't have time to put it in this video. This video is already long enough for, a quick little fun video. But I will try to go into these other fossils another time because I think this study and research of them is really fascinating. So if you want to see that, please leave a comment down below. Oh, I should probably tell you what I'm talking about before you leave a comment. I'm of course talking about eggs. With that said, and my dinosaur feces put away, we now make it to the end of the video. I hope you learned something from this super serious and educational video essay. I hope you now know so much about dinosaur and that you can, I don't know, impress your crush with it or something. Really good icebreaker for the first date. Hey, so what's your favorite color? I really love dinosaur Okay, so what the actual fuck? Now to drop the act of professionalism, I actually do hope you learned something from this video, because I know I did. This video, while about a bit more of a funny topic, is still full of real information, despite the date it was released. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more like it, then you can check out my channel where I do educational videos, which are hopefully a little bit more educational than this video is, as well as more paleo pop culture stuff, sort of like my ongoing and hopefully soon ending Jurassic World Evolution 3 campaign series, or my brand new paleo media review series. If you, for some odd reason, want to get to know me a little bit more, then you can check out my socials, which I will have linked in the description, of course, and you can also join my Discord to get updates about when I post and get notified about news about the channel itself, obviously. And lastly, of course, if you like paleontology and dinosaurs, feel free to like and subscribe for more. I'll see you next time, and happy April Fool's Day. Now we're in an end screen. Now we're in an end screen. If only you could see me, but there is a red end screen. Please be 20 seconds already. I don't want to keep doing this. I don't want to keep doing this. Hopefully it's been 20 seconds. Whenever it's been 20 seconds, Connor, please cut me off.